Hey everyone, welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament, looking at the New Testament church. And today we're going to be looking at a kind of a shorter section of scripture, and this is looking at Paul revealing his Roman citizenship, which is kind of important because it leads to um, the rest of what we see happening in Acts, him doing this. And so we'll read these 4 or 5 verses here and then go through some short notes. Like I said, this one is going to be a little bit shorter, but we just dive in because this is an important thing that we need to look at. Here it says, starting in verse 24 of Acts 22, he says, the commander brought Paul inside and ordered him lashed with whips and make him confess his crime. He wanted to find out why the crowd had become so furious. When they tied Paul down to lash him, Paul said to the officer standing there, is it legal for you to whip a Roman citizen who hasn't even been tried? When the officer heard this, he went to the commander and asked, what are you doing? This man is a Roman citizen. So the commander went over and asked Paul, tell me, are you a Roman citizen? Yes, I certainly am, Paul replied. I am too, the commander muttered. It costs me plenty. Paul answered, but I am a citizen by birth. The soldiers who were about to interrogate Paul quickly withdrew when they heard he was a Roman citizen, and the commander was frightened because he had ordered him bound and whipped. And so what we need to understand here is Paul is claiming his status as a Roman citizen. Paul was born a Roman, and this was at a critical time because he was about to be tortured to make him confess to his supposed crime that he supposedly did. But here's the thing: in that day, Roman citizenship was a valuable asset, very valuable asset, and to claim it falsely was actually a capital offense. If you claimed to be a Roman citizen and you weren't, then you would have been put to death. And so one of its principal benefits was the prohibition of scourging, or whipping, which they were about to do, and the right to appeal to the emperor. And so the commander was frightened for good reason because he had violated the Roman law, or was about to violate Roman law by ordering. Well, technically, he had violated by ordering this to happen. If they would have gone through with it, all of them would have been guilty of it, the commander and the officers. And so Paul could have appealed to this and said, "Hey, this is what this guy that they were about to do to me. They didn't even check to see if I was a Roman citizen." And all this, and so they could have been in serious trouble for breaking the law, and almost breaking the law for sure, about to whip or scourge or beat Paul. And so one of the things, the commander mentions to Paul, he's like, yeah, I'm a Roman citizen too, and it cost me plenty. During this time period, the early part of the reign of Emperor Claudius, um, um, Roman citizenship could actually be purchased, but it was extremely, extremely expensive. And so and then Paul's response was, yeah, I've been a Roman citizen from birth. Mine's not, or mine's from birth. Mine, I didn't purchase mine. I didn't buy mine. And and so that would have even made them even a little bit more scared, because this isn't someone who purchased his Paul didn't purchase his citizenship. He was born a Roman, and so they've seriously about messed up, seriously about violated some serious law. And so now we're going to see that Paul's going to appeal his case. He's going to be brought before the high council, and then eventually he's going to appeal to Caesar, which is something that they had the right to do. And we're going to see that. And so Paul at this point is using his citizenship to, one, keep himself safe, which is, there's nothing wrong with it. One of the things we see with Paul, and we'll see this again later on, is that, he didn't mind being punished for following Christ, but he wasn't going to allow himself to be just needlessly abused and beaten for something he didn't do. And so, he's using the law of the land to work out in his favor, which is a smart thing to do. And it's also going to lead him to Rome, which is where he wants to go eventually. And so we'll continue to study this. We'll continue to go through this. Like I said, tomorrow he's going to be presented before the high council, and then there's going to be a plan to kill Paul, just like they did with Jesus, so just like the Jews did with Jesus, because they didn't like what Jesus was teaching. It's funny how the religious people are okay with murdering people who don't believe their in their way, but we'll look at that tomorrow. Like I said, today's was short, but it's important to understand. I think sometimes we overlook this, but it's important to understand how serious and how important and how much of a privilege it was to be a Roman citizen in this time frame. And so Paul is using that to his advantage, which is smart. And so we'll continue to see what happens with him as he goes through this with his arrest, and eventually it leads to him to Rome. So as always, I hope everyone is learning from these. I appreciate everyone who takes the time to watch. I encourage you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. That way, you can continue to follow along with us as we go through these. But as always, appreciate everyone who takes time to watch, and I hope y'all have a wonderful day.